Welcome to the In Her Power podcast. My name is Kerri-Ann and I am an empowerment coach, Reiki master, and yoga teacher. But most importantly, I am a human being and a spiritual being just like you. I started this podcast to bring more awareness, more tools, and more insights into being in your power. I've been on a journey of personal growth and expansiveness for over 10 years. And the reason why I do this work of helping amazing women like you is because I have seen how powerful it is to live from a place of authenticity, both personally in my own life and for my clients. If you are listening to this podcast, then I imagine you're curious to learn more. Or maybe you feel stuck and don't know where to go. Or maybe you've just had this itching feeling that there's more to your life than what you're currently experiencing. So embrace that curiosity that is wanting to emerge here and step into your expansiveness. In this episode, I talk with Philippa Wilkin, and Philippa does breath work. It's an amazing conversation about using your breath to help not only stand in your power, but to clear what might be getting in the way. Breath is so, so powerful, and I was so excited to have this conversation with Philippa and to bring this information to you. So enjoy my conversation with Philippa Wilkin. Okay, welcome to the first episode ever of In Her Power podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest because she's not only a personal friend, but she's also done some incredible transformational work in my own life, and I'm really excited to share this with all of you. I want to introduce Philippa Wilkins. Philippa is a transformational coach, but more importantly, she does this amazing breath work that she's going to share with you today in our conversation, where you can really connect with your body and with your breath. And let me just tell you, it's a crazy, wild experience doing this work, but it's super transformative. And Philippa has a process that's just extraordinary. And I could go on and on forever talking about how wonderful she is, but it's probably better to have her talk to you, give you an experience of it so you can see it for yourself. So welcome, Philippa. Thank you for being on my first ever episode.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So to start, I think it would be awesome for you to say in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, like I said, I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? That's the age-old question. In a summary, I help people deal with their stuff and I help people find out what's holding them back and actually move through those blocks, right? Clear out some of the old things from the closet and become more free ultimately. And I think there are many of us, and this was myself included, that there are many things great in our lives, but there's just something missing. There's something that feels a little bit out of place. And regardless of, we might have all the trappings and measures of success, there's something not quite right. And so I kind of help people find themselves and their place in the world and really come home to themselves and find that, I guess, sense of peace and purpose of knowing why they're here and what they're here to do. And how do I do that? There's a few different ways that I do that, but my primary modality is breath work, a form of conscious connected breath work practice, and a few other things on the side. But that really is the key to, in my experience, really getting in touch with ourselves and what we're here to do, what matters to us, what's important, what we want, is connecting inwardly, like connecting to the really deep central core of who we are, our essence. And breath work and the breath for me is truth. So breath does that. It brings us back to the very fundamentals, and it brings us back to our body where all of our wisdom lies, and it allows our body also to release anything that is kind of holding us back, anything that's blocking us. So I guess I work in the transformational space, helping people become who they really are. And I've done that for the last nearly 6 years. My journey in the healing space has been about 10 years, my own personal journey. And before that, I was working in the corporate environment. So I've a foot in both camps. I did the 9 to 5. I did the busy, successful city high flyer thing. And then I've been on the therapeutic side. So I have a foot and the experience in both camps. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So, since I've experienced your work, the breath work that you do, and it's extraordinary, to someone who's never experienced it, I mean, what you're saying in terms of going in deep, finding yourself, undoing blocks is like what everyone I think really wants. But understanding how the breath does that, or how your process does that, is a little bit like, does that make sense to the average person? I remember when people were like, yoga's amazing. I'm like, yoga's not amazing. Like, you just move your body, not realizing until you actually do it what actually happens when you do yoga. And I would say the same thing with your breath work. So can you explain a little bit more, just to get people to understand how doing this work shifts, and unblocks and transforms you?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good point, because until you experience it, you don't know what the potential or the capacity is, right? And with something like your breath and breathing, it's something that we do day in, day out, and we don't even think about it, and we don't recognize how powerful it is. Now, if some people are listening to this, watching this, that have practiced yoga for a while, and some pranayama techniques, for example, some breathing techniques, then they will have an idea of how our breath can be used really to change our state. It can be used in so many different ways. I just want to preface with this, like, breath work, in inverted commas, can be so many different types or styles and practices of breathing. The main one that I focus on for deep, I would say, integration and journeying work is a style of conscious connected breathing, so breathing without pauses. And that tends to really open up the body and open up whatever energetic blockages are there. But then there are other forms of breath work, and I'll just talk about these as well, because these are just as valuable, in that there are breathing techniques that can bring us just a sense of calm and bring us back to baseline, right? And bring us out of our fight or flight or our stress response, just to get a few moments of peace and reset our body. So I just want to give that overview that breathwork is way, way bigger than me or just my practice. There are so many different styles and techniques that you can go and explore and investigate and see what works for you. And it really depends on what you're looking for. But so that's that. What I say with breathwork is, it's like eating an apple. Like, you ask me, like, oh, what does an apple taste like? And I can say, well, it's sweet and it's juicy and it's crunchy and it's this and it's that. And until you eat the apple, you're not going to know what an apple tastes like. You've just got a mental image of it in your head, right? Same with the yoga thing. It's like, well, they do this stuff, so what's the big deal with that? The breath, anytime you come back to working with your breath and taking control, really, breath work is about consciously working with your breath, right? It's kind of observation of what's going on and an awareness of what's going on, and also then conscious control or changing how you're breathing, because breathing is the one function in our body, significant function in our body, that we have control over. So we don't sit here and think, I'll beat my heart and I'll, get my kidneys working and my stomach to digest stuff, right? And at the same time, we just breathe. But it's the one thing that we can actually influence and take control over. So when we realize that, and we can start experimenting with it, then we can get a feel of what that might give us. So perhaps we'll just run straight into a quick exercise so people can have that kind of experience. And just to preface this, our inhalation, our breathing in, is related to our our sympathetic nervous system. So our fight or flight response, right, where we get ready to run, our fear response, essentially. And so that's related to the way that we inhale. Our inhalation controls that response. And our exhalation is related to our parasympathetic nervous system. So our rest and digest state, our relaxation state. So ideally, day to day, we want to have an even inhale and exhale because we keep these two systems in balance. Where we get too much in our sympathetic state, if we're in a lot of fear, if we're in a lot of panic, anxiety or worry, it's like we're driving with the accelerator stuck down. Right? Our system is in this constant state of kind of energy needing to move, right? We can't sit still, maybe we fidget. And what that does over time is it actually creates chronic stress. So it's actually negative from our immunity perspective and from our health perspective to be in that state all the time. And likewise, we don't want to be stuck in this kind of relaxed, perhaps lethargic state all the time either. So we need to have a balance of these, but we can use the parasympathetic state and we can use our breath to bring these into balance and to bring us out of that fight or flight response, which is when we're in that response, we don't think rationally, right? The world looks like a scary place. Even people look like scary people when they're not. And so coming into this balance, we can do with the breath. So it's really, really that simple, is like the thing that you have to control the way that you feel, really, to control your mental state as well, is in your breath. It's something that you have control over. And especially in these days and times when there's a lot going on in the world, as we know, this is really, I can't stress enough to people, this is the one thing that you've got, right? That nobody can take away from you. You've got your breath. And there's a saying that I love so much, and it's, when you own your breath, nobody can steal your peace. And it is so true. So I'll stop talking now.
Wait,
but
just one second. Just before we go into the exercise, I was thinking about, because someone like myself who has had panic attacks in the past, like I remember it was like I was breathing in more than I was breathing out. It was like, and it's like breathing into that paper bag helped me come back into my parasympathetic because I was breathing back out versus just taking so much air in. So I love just that thought process and visualize that people can connect to that and the importance of the breath. And like you said, the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So, okay, I'm ready to exercise.
Awesome. Well, and I was just going to add on to that. Often we are, when we're in this parasympathetic fight or flight state, we're usually breathing in our chest. Right? Our breath is very high up in our chest, and likewise with something like panic attacks, there's a feeling or a sensation that we can't get enough air, we can't breathe. And actually, for most of us, this is because we're not utilizing our diaphragm properly. So the muscle that is up underneath our rib cage is usually kind of stuck, or it's not utilized, and that really is the proper muscle for breathing. And so how do we know when we're utilizing that? Is we're breathing and our belly moves. When we breathe in, our abdomen comes out, right? And when we breathe out, our abdomen sinks back in again. So if we're having a panic attack or this really kind of intense sense that we can't breathe, the focus, whether it's breathing into a bag or breathing with a focus down into the belly, is actually going to give us more air. It's going to give us more oxygen, because that diaphragm, which sits under the ribs, is actually the primary breathing muscle. That's what we want to be using.
It's so interesting you said it, because I remember going through my phase of panic attacks when I would see my chiropractor. He said, God, your stomach is like in your diaphragm. And he would have to like push the stomach out so the diaphragm had space to move. Does that make sense? It was like I pushed everything up into my chest and like pushing it out. And he taught me that technique to like move the stomach out. So, especially because I was a runner and I was having trouble really getting full breath as a runner, because my diaphragm was like up against my, lungs, because my stomach was so out of place.
Well, and just to add on to that, actually, where you remind me, one of the reasons that we don't breathe with our diaphragm, and with our bellies kind of extending. One, we have this culture where we've got to have a six-pack or, a flat stomach and this kind of thing. If you look at small children and babies, they look like Buddhas, right? They look like Buddhas for a reason, because their bellies move and their diaphragms move. And as we get older, we lose that capacity. So many of us are not using our diaphragm in that way because of muscle tension in our abdomen. And the other reason is that often our emotional stuff gets stored in our stomach and our abdomen region. And so when we breathe down there, we can get in contact with some of the stuff that perhaps is lying dormant in our system that we don't want to address or deal with. And so that's a bit scary. And so when we and this is one of the other things with breathwork, is that breathwork holding our breath is the typical pattern that we use when we don't want to feel something. Right? So we don't want to cry, don't want to get upset, don't want to scream at your kids, don't want to shout at your boss, whatever it is, right? What do we do? And the emotion of the feeling goes away and we kind of dissipates and we get on with life. But what happens when we do that over and over again is that there becomes a point where we can't keep the lid on it anymore. And so all of that energy, which just wants to actually move, just be recognized and moved, is stored in the body. And often that is in muscle tension, and often that is preventing our full range of breathing to be utilized. So that's another reason that sometimes we find it difficult to breathe in the belly, and it's a practice to learn how to do that. One of the easiest ways, actually, if that's difficult for you, is actually just to lay on your front with your arms kind of up like a cactus on something hard like a floor or something more solid, with your head to the side, and just feel your belly on the floor as you breathe. That's a really, really simple practice, just to, am I actually breathing in my belly,
Yep. Interestingly enough, I do Wim Hof's breathing every morning, and if I do it in a chair compared to on the floor, like the floor is like full on. I can really feel it. In the chair, not as much.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
and it's finding what works for you as well. That's what I want to say with the breathwork thing. It's like I use some Wim Hof breathwork as well and different things, and horses for courses, and different types of breathwork for different days or occasions.
Same here. Yep.
Yeah.
I listen to my intuition, and it tells me what I need that day. Okay, so I want to get exercise.
Let's go. Okay, so I'm going to be closed eyes because that's generally
that's fine.
So, I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes if you're here, and if you're listening along and you want to join in, you're more than welcome to. So I would advise not doing this while driving or anything else like that. Just bringing yourself to a comfortable, either seated or lying down position, whichever works for you. And whatever is comfortable. And then once you're there, just allowing your eyes to close. And just allowing yourself to arrive in the moment, here and now. And we're just going to take a couple of breaths in, and we're going to breathe in through the nose, and then we're just going to have a little sigh out of the mouth. And at the same time, we're going to raise our shoulders and we're going to drop our shoulders. So when we breathe in through the nose, we raise our shoulders. And then out through the mouth, drop the shoulders. I'm going to do this a couple more times. So in through the nose, shoulders up, out through the mouth. In through the nose, shoulders up, out through the mouth. Okay, beautiful. And just allowing yourself to feel what that feels like. Now just calling all of your energy back. Wherever it's been, maybe your attention is somewhere else. Maybe your mind is wandering. Just bringing all of your attention back to the here and now. And I invite you to feel, if you're sitting or lying down, the ground beneath you. So if you're sat on a chair, feeling the ground underneath your feet. If you're lying down, underneath your back, at any point that your body touches the floor. Just bringing your awareness to that place. Contact between your weight and the floor. And just noticing that the floor is here to support you. Feeling the weight of your buttocks on the chair. Feeling your weight resting down on the ground and the ground rising up to meet you. Knowing that you're safe and held, connected to the earth. And that this reference is always here whenever you need it. Just allowing yourself to sink a little bit more, to relax a little bit more with each breath. We're going to do a very simple breathing exercise, which is we're going to breathe in and out through the nose for this. And we're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 8. In and out through the nose. And by doing this, what we're doing is exaggerating our exhalation. And that is engaging more our rest and digest state, our parasympathetic state. And it will bring us to a calm and centered place. So letting go of the last breath, breathing out, and we're going to be breathing in through the nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4 through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for a count of 8 through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In through the nose for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out through the nose for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into the nose for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for a count of 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just continue breathing in for 4 and out for 8 at your own time. And just coming to the last round of counting. And then just letting go of counting and letting your breath do whatever it likes, whatever it feels like doing, whatever feels good. And just allowing yourself to be in this moment. And just notice what that feels like. That feels in your body. Noticing your state of mind. Noticing again the ground beneath you. The density of your body in contact with the ground. I'm just going to take a breath in through the nose, and we're going to have a sigh out through the mouth. So breathing in. I'm going to do that a couple more times. Just notice how that feels. Breathing in through the nose. Out through the mouth. Last time in through the nose. And then just gently wiggling your fingers or toes, bringing your awareness back, bringing yourself back. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
So what's beautiful about that, so thank you. What's beautiful about that is it's not only that you just feel more calmer, what I feel is my head is more clearer. If that makes sense. I think when we're on this go, 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 or stress, or in your sympathetic, and really in your sympathetic, we're reacting from that place, and not allowing ourselves to like come back into parasympathetic and find clarity. Like when you get triggered in emotion or something, we often react from that trigger versus coming back down and relaxing. How I actually describe it, it's like shaking a can or a bottle of soda and like wanting to open and drink it, and it just makes a big mess, versus like, oh, let it settle, and then it's so much more enjoyable. And I think of realizing I'm triggered and like allowing the energy to move without allowing it to spew on everyone, and then finding the clarity to deal with whatever triggered you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
And I think what I'm feeling right now in the world is there's a lot of triggering for a lot of people, because there's a lot of uncertainty going on with this virus. As things are changing, they're out of the familiar, but people are in a space that's home. It's supposed to be home and it's supposed to feel safe. But the outer world looks super scary right now, in essence, for some people. For some of us, it doesn't. But for a lot of people, it feels super scary. And so there's a lot of triggering. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of that's not familiar anymore. That's not normal. How do you help people manage through that? Like, what do you recommend, especially right now in just day-to-day stuff?
Great question. So interesting times that we live in. For me personally, my day-to-day life is very similar to my day-to-day life before this was all happening. And so the breath is definitely a huge tool for being able to deal with that uncertainty and challenge, because I find with something like uncertainty, we're in a situation that very few of us have ever been in before, unless we've been in conflict zones, in in extreme environments. And certainly the majority of us in the Western world for the last 50 or so years have been relatively unscathed by natural disasters or big scary things. Let's just put it that way. And so I think with this situation, there's a big element of shock. There's a big element of, oh my goodness, what's happened? Because in some sense, the world has changed overnight. What we knew as a solid or perceived to be a solid and stable foundation has all of a sudden been ripped from underneath our feet, or it may appear to have been. And that's pretty anxiety inducing for the majority of people. When we're caught up in, particularly if we're caught up in news and the mainstream media, I would suggest for me right now is not the place to be getting your information. Certainly not on a regular basis. So information diet is key for dealing with what's going on, because fear and panic are probably the worst things that you can do for your immunity, actually. Living in that state is depleting your system. It's actually lowering your immunity. So the chances of you getting sick are greater. So that's, a friend of mine says, you're managing your reality tunnel. Right? What you look at, what you consume, who you relate to is really, really important. Just as food is important in terms of your diet, what's your information diet? So that's one thing definitely I would say to be mindful of right now. And I think the other thing is to have an awareness that these unusual times are going to trigger our unresolved stuff, right? The things that perhaps we've not been wanting to look at. Perhaps we've been so busy being busy, and I mean, I was one of these people for a while, so busy being busy, and part of that is because we don't want to look beneath the bonnet. There's a fear, there's a big fear usually that, oh my goodness, I don't want to look under the bonnet because I don't know what I'm going to find. Maybe I'm going to be a phony, or maybe I'm going to find something dark and nasty, right? And now we're being confronted perhaps with some of those things that we've been pushing away, that it's now time to look at. And part of that is also about being, having compassion for ourselves in that process, and the other people that we're in relationship with too, in the understanding we are humans, right? And we're all at different levels of awareness. But we also have much control over what goes on in our mind. Right? Yes. And when we recognize that, and when we actually take responsibility for that, that's when the game changes. And so for me, it's something like a breathwork practice, whether it's, relaxation breathwork, whether it's meditation, whatever it is that brings you into a deeper sense of your own understanding of yourself, is going to help you manage, right, and process anything that's coming up right now. Because for me, usually fear is like fear or anger are usually cover-ups for some other emotion. And as I said, the breath, as much as we can use the breath to hold our emotion in, and it holds us trapped, keeps us in a holding pattern. It's like the plane going around in the sky. And we wonder why we get the same experiences and the same types of people and the same emotions over and over. It's because it's a pattern that we're carrying that we can't unhook ourselves from yet, right? It's usually from childhood. It's usually from our first 7 years. It's our unconscious programming. So something like this now starts to interrupt that pattern, or bring it to the surface. Exactly. And now we're like, but often, fear and anger, they cover up something else. They usually cover up shame or guilt or grief, right? The things that as human beings, we really generally don't want to feel or admit that we even have. But the majority of us have that programming at such a deep level, whether it's, heavily religious background, whether it's just how your family system was. We're not necessarily programmed with you're amazing, you're wonderful, you can do anything you want. We're programmed with know your place, be quiet, don't get above your station, you didn't do that right.
Mm-hmm.
We're programmed with all this negative stuff, and we then take that voice on as our own.
Yep.
And we believe that is us. So I kind of got off the point, but breath work as a way of, I guess, managing your mindset is really, really powerful, even if it's just what we just did now,
Mm-hmm.
of bringing yourself back to homeostasis, bringing yourself back to balance, and then you can act from that place.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go deeper into actually really processing those emotions, then there are other types of breath work for that, which are more active. And so that's generally the breathwork practice that I've worked with you with, that you're familiar with, where we breathe with no pauses.
Yep.
We breathe with no pauses, and what that does really is it creates almost like I want to say like a trance-like state,
Mm-hmm.
right, where you enter an even deeper awareness of yourself.
Oh, for sure.
And in that, and in that process, we're also relying on the intelligence of the body, because we think we know what we need to do, but really our body knows what it needs to do to unhook and release these patterns and this emotional energy and blockages. So by breathing without pauses, we're actually tapping into the energy of the body, and the body gets to decide what it releases. And so you can use some sound, and we can use some movement, but fundamentally we can use this connected breath practice to integrate. Actually, it's not about throwing out stuff, it's not about getting rid of energy, because we know, if you look at, energy can't be created or destroyed, it just transforms.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuck energy, the stuff that perhaps we don't want to feel too, is the key to our liberation. Because once we can take that, we consume so much energy keeping a lid on that stuff that we don't want to touch, it actually drains away our life force.
Yep.
It drains, sucks the life out of us. So if we can actually allow ourselves, and the feeling is in the healing is in the feeling. Most of us are afraid of feeling. We don't want to go there, but actually it's the not feeling that keeps us stuck. So if we can allow ourselves to go to, step into the discomfort almost, and allow ourselves to feel, whether it's cry, whether it's scream, whatever we need to do, that in the energy is going to move, and it's also going to come back to us. We're going to be able to reclaim a part of us that we've been trying to stuff down, and using extra energy to stuff it down. And actually now we're just going to integrate that experience. It's going to become part of us, but it's not, because we've allowed it to express and process, it's not holding us prisoner anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was an experience that we had, and we can reflect on it, but it doesn't cause the same emotional kind of trigger. It doesn't make us angry, it doesn't make us sad, it's just something that happened.
Yep.
And then we can get on with our life moving forward, rather than being continually pulled like with a bungee cord back into the past, because that's what we're doing otherwise.
Yep. I wanted to say there's a couple things, great nuggets out of there. A couple of things around, of course, feeling your feelings, and my work around emotion, and emotion is energy in motion, and really feeling the energy, letting it allow the sensations to move however they want to move. Throwing a temper tantrum, release writing, crying, all that kind of stuff, and then allowing it to move out. And again, as you said, the body knows. Like when you start to do this work, like just your exercise, and I'm a little bit more tuned in probably than I would say most of the people I work with, hence why they work with me, because they want to be tuned in as well. But when you were doing that exercise, like I was already tuned into like, okay, what's happening in my body? But my body was showing me. I wasn't necessarily looking for it. I just went in, trusted it, got out of my mind, and just started to feel and be in the body. And it started to like show things. And what's so key is getting out of the mind, because like you said, this shame, blame, especially when it comes to our feelings. When we were infants, we could feel with no shame. There was no blame. But there was a point in our as we became toddlers, that all of a sudden it was, don't cry over spilt milk. Why are you getting angry over that? And we felt shame for feeling our emotions. And we are literally shaming our authentic self. So like you said, as you do this work, having compassion for yourself and giving yourself permission. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first because you have been taught and told and you took on that it's not good to feel these feelings. But the more that you actually do it, you come back to your authentic self. It feels so good. It's almost like getting a massage when you give yourself permission. But you have to work through, as you said, that shame and have that compassion. Yeah. And just move through it. And what I would say, the exercise you did is so perfect right now for just day to day helping you, one, to just connect with your breath and your body. Because as you know, if we go diving in deep, we hit the panic zone versus just the outside the comfort zone. And when we get into panic, it's harder for the body to feel comfortable. It's harder for us to feel comfortable with the work. But if we just start to slowly go in and start to connect and go, oh, that's a little uncomfortable. Can I lean into that before it gets to the panic? And I share sometimes my whole story. When I started to have the recent trauma 8-9 months ago that I had, emotional trauma that happened, was interesting. The whole right side of my body almost shut down, in essence. Like I started losing my eyesight, had an issue with my shoulder, my leg just started like shaking. And as I was doing work with my own practitioners and with modalities, I use some that you've taught me, and just even trying to look at the right side, it was like, you're not, don't even look at me. It was so scary. Now I can really look at it. It's not fully healed. It's not, I compare the two sides. The right is still got some stuff there, but I see it now, but I've worked through it, worked through a lot of emotion. So as people step into this work, it's like baby steps. And I think the great place to start, especially in this current pandemic that we're in, or transformation that we're in, let's be honest, I call it a great awakening, is to just do the simple exercise that you have just done in this conversation, and then if you feel like I want more, it's a great opportunity to step in and do more work, which I kind of want to move into how, like, your other programs and how people can work with you. And I also want to share my experience of the first time I worked with you, so people can kind of know. Not everyone will have that same experience, but I think it'd be kind of fun to share what happened to me.
Yeah, totally. Maybe you should share that now.
Okay. So the first time I worked with Philippa, which, by the way, I met her here in Brazil.
I don't even know if I know the story, by the way. I think I'm as excited as everybody else.
It'll trigger a memory for you. I was feeling like crap, and I was having some tooth issue, an abscess was coming on. And an abscess doesn't always mean it's connected with your tooth. For me, it often means something's going on with my gut, and that my body is reacting through an abscess. And I was having an abscess, which I hadn't had. I had one other time that I can remember in my life. And you offered to, like, let's do a breathing session. So I was like, all right, I'm game. I'm up for trying all sorts of new things. And, again, like you said, you constantly have us breathe, just fully in, fully out, fully in, fully out. And there's a point through the session that, I'm like throwing a temper tantrum. It feels like I'm kicking and screaming and just like moving energy and moving energy and moving energy. And then I think the session was like 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. And then when I came home, the abscess got worse and it burst. You remember? It just like burst, which is interesting because if you look up through Louise Hay's work, abscess are like bursts of anger. And during that phase of my life, I was moving a lot of anger out of my body. I was working with what I call my magic doctor. He's a doctor, but I call him magical because he's studied in Eastern philosophies. And he was like, anger was showing up in my liver, all on my right side again. So again, this whole right side has been a lot of anger, the unprocessed anger. But it helped actually move that energy to heal, because within days the abscess had healed. But all of a sudden it would burst and I had blood coming in my mouth. It was terrible. I remember I called a dentist, and the dentist was like, don't do anything, keep it clean, put salt water on it, like just keep it clean, keep it, and then it just healed. So I didn't have any issue. But for me, it was just that you helped me to move whatever energy was starting to really show up. And my body was saying, you need to move this. And for me, it felt like anger. Like, you need to move this anger. I didn't need to know where it came from. where it came from in my past, why I had stored it there. All I needed to do was help my body and give my body permission to move it.
Yeah.
Do you remember now?
Yeah. I remember now. Okay. Yeah, crazy stories. That's the great thing with breathwork, is that, there's an aspect of it that is magical.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say about facilitation is that I'm a facilitator. There's a lot of people out there that will. I'm reluctant to use the word healer in the context that it's bandied around, because I believe that you're the only one that does the breath work, really. You're the one, and this is why it's a self-healing modality. At the end of the day, it's a self-empowering modality, is that once you learn it, it's something you've got for life. It's actually something that you do. When I work with people, either online or in person, there are certain things that I do, obviously. But through that process, it's like an alchemy process. You're the one breathing, you're the one feeling, you're the one doing the work, and you're the one getting the results. Mm-hmm. So I always kind of like to bring that back, is that, I'm the pair of hands, and I'm the safe space, and I'm the guide for whatever needs to happen. But whatever happens is, I've seen some weird and wonderful and amazing things. And that's the magic of the breath, is that it's not clear always how things are working, right? Mm-hmm. But miracles and magic happen. People that have had, I guess, one of my earlier clients, and this is a few years ago now, he's a good friend of mine since, I did a 20-minute breathwork session with her. She was Italian, and she talked for a long time, and so we didn't get very long to do the actual breathwork session. But in 20 minutes, something really, really big for her came up and resolved. And it was something that she told me she'd spent the best part of over 30 years and all kinds of psychotherapy and everything else to attempt to deal with. Mm-hmm. And in that 20 minutes, something shifted for her, something significant shifted for her. And that was the breath. That was that. Don't ask me to explain how or why or what, but that's the power that the breath has to really remove things that have been latent or apparent for such a long time. And I don't always know how, and I'm good with that. I don't need to know how.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What I love about what you just said, especially about being the facilitator, is it gives the power back to the person. And that's what I'm all about. Like, let me empower you. This is about your journey. You're doing this work. I'm just the facilitator, and giving them back their power. And that can also help in these uncertain times. And like, I was even thinking about, just when you feel uncertain, come back to your breath. You have control over that. Come back to your breath. So how can people work with you?
So you can come and find me on the internet of the internet. I have a program that I'm just launching at the moment, which is an 8-week breathwork program online, which I'm super excited about. It's actually going to be the first time I've done this in this way, and it's going to incorporate a whole host. It's breathwork primarily about really teaching people how to utilize the power of their own breath, clear out a load of things in the process, and really to help empower people, and make them, I guess, get them really connected with themselves, and from that place really be unshakable. That for me is that this deep connection with self. That's where the real kind of trust and certainty lies. It never really lay outside of us anyway, but we're now getting the opportunity to source that within. So if that resonates with people and they're ready to dive into a deeper journey, then that's what's happening at the moment. But you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and maybe you can tag my handles after this so that people can come along and find me. Will. But I'm Philippa Wilkin. My brand is BreathWorks, because at the moment it does what it says on the tin. The breath does the work. You don't need to do it with your mind. Your body and your breath can do the work for you. Makes it so much easier.
It does. totally does. Yep. Yep.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, Philippa. And
Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for listening.
And I'm excited, of course, for people to check out your work and to try this modality out in terms of their own transformation, stepping into their power and just owning their life. So
yeah. Cheers to that.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Philippa Wilkin. All the information on how to learn more about her work or to connect with her is in the show notes. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a reflective question, just something for you to think about and connect with at a more deeper level. The question is, how connected are you with your breath currently? How connected are you with your breath currently? So take some time to reflect and maybe even journal about it, because it's a great opportunity to learn more about yourself. Now, this podcast is a gift, and if you're interested in supporting this work, please use the link in the show notes to make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution or a recurring contribution. Whatever you decide to make, and even if it's zero, all is honored here, and you still deserve all the goodness that this podcast provides for you. Also, if you haven't joined my Facebook community called In Her Power, I've left a link in the show notes so you can join that community. It is for women only. For those men listening, I'm sorry that you will not be able to be included in this community, because we create a safe space right now for women to do this work. But I'll make sure all this information is in the show notes. That is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember the African word Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Beijos. Until next time.